All right, you guys, the start of the new DCU is officially begun. Hey, what's up, you guys? It's me, Dear Kid, the review, back again with another video. So, Creature Commandos has just released with 2 episodes starting off, and it's technically the first project in the new DCU that's giving us the vibe and what to expect with this whole new universe moving forward. And yes, it does kind of suck to the fact that we're basically starting the DC universe again from scratch, and it's a whole new universe going back to square one. But I have a feeling that James Gunn already has a plan in mind for what he wants to do with this new universe, what he wants to keep, and what elements he wants to take in from the past previous universe. But everything about this show so far I like. But then again, there are some elements where I'm like, how does that make sense in the way in this context? I'm not going to talk about everything in the show. I'm just going to be talking about some of the things I liked, but then again, there are some little thing aspects I feel like, okay, they aren't negatives, but if I'm really going to be talking about negatives, it's more of me just addressing a couple things where I'm like, okay, but how does that make sense with this? Expect a big rant, something like that at the end of this video. So starting out, this show actually takes place after the events of the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker Season 1. So after Amanda Waller's daughter exposed her secrets out to the world, she enlists the help of Rick Flag Sr. to go on an undercover mission to protect a princess. And since there's no Suicide Squad or metahumans that she actually has control of, she goes for the second best choice, which is monsters. Rounding out the team, we have the Bride, Dr. Phosphorus, G.I. Robot, Nina Mazursky, and Weasel returning from the Suicide Squad. Also, Rick Flag Sr., which, if you can tell, is basically Rick Flag's father. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I only know half of the team members so far, but some of them are my first time introduction to these characters, and so far I can say it's a decent lineup. I know Suicide Squad had that whole thing of mixing together villains from all across the DC universe, some of them majority Batman villains for the first 2 movies, but then again, there were some other characters spread throughout where you're like, oh, that's that person's villain. I know this is the third time James Gunn is doing a team of misfits again, but then again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. Starting off, let me talk about the animation in this thing because I had some prior knowledge beforehand of the show where some of the animators who worked on Invincible were going to be working on this series too. And I said, okay, so it's going to be looking exactly like Invincible. But then again, when I hear that these same animators designed those promo teasers, like the ones where you see him in the diner talking to either Cecil or Alan, I said, you know what? Invincible would have looked better if they used that exact same style because the way it's used in this show, it really looks amazing. Unlike Marvel's What If, where they use 3D aspects of making the characters do almost exactly like what the people with themselves do in live action, this animation style is still keeping within the parts of the DC animated style where they go through the adventures. Everything's exaggerated as is in the comics, and most of their movements are cartoony, but not too cartoony enough to know the fact that, okay, so this is a mix of live action, and a majority of these characters will be portrayed also in live action too. Some of the sequences have that James Gunn feeling where he mixes in some of the music aspects within the fights themselves, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna expect a okay or maybe good soundtrack out of this. But then again, it's like, I could deal without it. Something about the show I didn't even expect because I don't think I've seen her in the promos or any trailers for this thing. Where I already saw the trailer at New York Comic Con, which is why I didn't do a video on it because I'm like, oh, I'd rather just get my natural glance reaction at the thing, and I'm just gonna say right here, I did get a pick with James Gunn at the con as well. But I didn't realize that Cersei was the actual villain for the show so far, which I'm like, oh, so we're doing this thing. We're doing another Wonder Woman connection here. And that's what I like about the start of this whole new DC universe so far is the fact that, okay, so the way they explained it is that James Gunn mentioned that, okay, everything exists, everybody is out there doing their own adventures, there are heroes out in the DC universe. The only one we haven't gotten to yet is Superman. Everybody else is out there, everybody else is doing their thing, and there are kind of mentions to Metropolis in this too. But everything on the side of metahumans, gods, witches, and monsters all exist in this universe, and there's no need for explanation saying, so you're telling me that there are witches and science or nothing like that Marvel thing they do? Everything exists, magic is real, demons are real, and gods exist in this universe. Now here's where I gotta get into the nitpick zone of things because at New York Comic Con, James mentioned how things here in this episode by episode basis is gonna go crossing over into live action. But then again, I have a feeling like, okay, I get what you're going with, but what needs explaining is the fact that there are certain mentions and nods where I'm like, wait a minute, so this happened here in the Suicide Squad, but then they also mentioned events in Peacemaker, but prior to the show's actual release that they said that, okay, so everything in Peacemaker is canon except that little Justice League scene at the end. To that, which I'm like, okay, that's one way of saying it. Okay, that whole Justice League sequence didn't happen, but then again, there are other mentions within the show itself that mention the Justice League and characters like Batman, Superman, Green Arrow, which tells me, okay, they exist. But what also needs explaining is a bit of other references because the Suicide Squad and everything that they did in that movie is canon. But then again, you have characters like Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie, which I'm like, okay, you exist prior to this whole James Gunn thing, and you existed prioritizing in the first one in the original Zack Snyder playing DCEU. I know common audiences are going to be thinking of that since they just go into these movies seeing, oh, DC, I gotta go see what it is. But guys like me who overlook these things were like, okay, but you say that this isn't canon, but this character lived through some of these adventures and did their own thing, so you're telling me that everything they did doesn't matter? To put it plainly, it was said that anything that the show mentions at that particular point, those events happened, those characters were there, but specifically characters that mention something outside, like the Justice League, Superman, they're not canon yet, they don't exist yet. So anything that happened between the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, everything happened except those little minor characters. But we'll see how that goes with that Superman trailer. Creature Commandos, for the most part, has a solid start, but the real question is, how will this go for the next couple episodes? Because I'm feeling like we're going to be diving into a deep episode by episode basis where each of them is going to go into a different backstory with the characters. Episode 2 does it especially. And the episodes themselves are short, they're like at least 20 to 23 minutes long, but part of me feels like, okay, so this show is worth a binge. I know every week we're going to be seeing a whole new side of the team leading up to the actual team up where we're going to get, oh, one final battle, maybe we're going to get a little bit of, oh, what's going on within this time period within these characters. Also, the fact that there's some other villains in the show, like I know Clayface is here at some point. But most importantly, stick around till after the credits because there aren't post-credit scenes. They're doing like the next time we're this season on. And not gonna lie, when I saw the, oh, so this is what we're doing here, and they show off a couple characters, I'm like, so the first time you've actually demonstrated this character and basically is his first official debut is here. I gotta say, everybody, oh my god, I know there's gonna be people online complaining about it, but then again, it's like, you know what? Zack Snyder kind of did this and y'all got mad at him. You look at this and you're like, you know what? It's the same thing, but it's almost like he's taking inspiration by something and doing something good with it. But then again, everybody's like, you know what? James Gunn is ruining this universe. But I'm like, okay, we're seeing little bits and heroes of who might or might not show up in this. So I like that. But don't worry, you already know that's not going to be his official look because that trailer should be coming around before Lord of the Rings, really. Warner Brothers' next release, Warner Brothers movie. It all kind of makes sense. Those are my thoughts about Creature Commandos. Let me know what you thought about the show in the comments below. Leave a like, don't forget to subscribe. And also let me know how you feel about the show in the comments so far. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Bye.